Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Spacian Yugioh deck profile for March 2024. Wanted to update the Spacian deck. It's been over a year since the last update, and we've gotten a pretty good amount of support, throughout the years for different variants and additions to the deck, but wanted to still include my favorite of the Spacian monsters to contact fuse with Neos, and then also the additional plays to go into cards like the Yubel fusion we have, and also the setup with Rainbow Neos always being a fun powerhouse to include into the deck as well. Trying to stick to as pure of a Spacian deck with, some of the needed elemental hero package in for a little more consistency, but still very happy as always with the results of the deck. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For our, elemental hero monsters, we're running 2 copies of elemental hero Neos. I feel it's all we need really for the initial setup. Some of the best ways to set up our monsters for our fusions come in the form of Neos fusion, which can send Neos right from the deck to the graveyard to give us our fusion, and then being able to, recycle them back into the deck with cards like Miracle Contact can still provide the many different forms of contact fusion that we need in the form of spells to go for a faster playstyle to begin with. We're also running 2 copies of Elemental Hero's Spirit of Neos. With this card, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense. If you do, it cannot be destroyed by battle. If it's special summoned, you can add from your deck to your hand 1 polymerization or 1 spell or trap that mentions Elemental Hero monster's card name. During your main phase, you can shuffle this card into the deck to special summon 1 Elemental Hero normal monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Spirit of Neos once per turn, but it's meant to grab Neos as well, so once again, another search form, which is why we only need the 2 copies of Neos, as stated before, giving you a special summon and more defensive play in the form of Spirit of Neos, while still giving you a use on your own turn to be able to get out your main needed monster for your contact fusions. And I also run 2 copies of Neospace Connector. When it's normal summon, you can special summon 1 Neospatian monster or 1 Elemental Hero Neos from your hand or deck in defense position, and you contribute this card to target 1 Neospatian or Elemental Hero Neos in your graveyard and special summon it in defense. So if we set up the Elemental Hero Neos in the graveyard, as said with cards like Neos Fusion, we can then use the Tribute of Connector to at least grab that Neos back onto the field again. You can only use each effect once per turn, but it's perfect because then the initial grab from Connector can get the Neospatian monster and then recycle back the Elemental Hero Neos. So even if we don't necessarily go for a Neospatian fusion with Neos Fusion initially, we at least have the first fusion to go into and then Connector to continue our plays later on. And for the Neospatian monsters, I run 1 copy of Aqua Dolphin, 1 Flare Scarab, 1 Grand Mole, and the 1 Hummingbird for my lineup. I left out Dark Panther and Glow Moss. Now, this is only because I have an Air Neos for my version of the deck. If you do not, which, a lot of people do because the card's never been reprinted, you can take out the copy of Air Hummingbird, put in a copy of Dark Panther, and that will just switch around some of the extra cards, which we'll go over as well, for you to replace not needing the Air Hummingbird in the space as well. But you really only need 1 copy of each Neospatian monster. They don't really provide much on their own. They're most here, to provide the needed requirements for the fusion plays, and a lot of times they can just be recycled and resummoned for their own summons also. And then also the 1 copy of Rainbow Dragon for being used with Rainbow Neos, the 1 copy of Yubel for the Neos Kluger, and then the Neos Wiseman that we will summon off of Kluger when it leaves the field also, just to have another big boss monster to be able to summon out. I also like that these cards have been recently reprinted in the Battles of Legends Chapter 1, making them more available for people who do want to include them in the deck. And then also running 3 copies of Cross Keeper. I actually think this is the first 3 of copy that we have in the deck. You just have so many cards that can easily be searched out and utilized that not really needed at 3 of copies. But Cross Keeper, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard to special summon 1 Elemental Hero or Neospatian monster from your hand or graveyard, but negates effects if summoned from the graveyard. If you special summon an Elemental Hero Fusion monster while this card's in your graveyard, you can banish this card, draw 2 cards, then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. So what I like about Cross Keeper is it's just consistent. It gives you draws to hopefully have more cards to keep fueling your engine while still being able to also, ignite some plays, potentially depending on what you want to summon out onto the field. And then lastly, for the actual monster engines of the deck, 2 copies of Elemental Hero Prisma, just being able to reveal Fusion Monster from your extra deck, which you can easily do depending on the extra deck monster you reveal off of your Elemental Hero Prisma. You can then send that monster and have this card count as the name, not only setting up that monster in the graveyard for you to reuse, but also being a viable, hero target for cards like a Hero Lives that we also run in the deck, while still focusing on the purity of the actual Neo-Spacian deck while not having to rely too much on an actual Elemental Hero engine. And then the last monster in the main deck is just 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. I don't really run too big of a hand trap lineup. Ash Blossom is literally the only card that I have in the deck, just in case you do end up going second, you have some means to at least shut down some of your opponent's plays before you even summon out any of your monsters. Moving on now to the spells. I would say the spells are definitely one of the most important part of the deck to begin with. 3 copies of EN Engaged Neospace. You send 1 Neo-Spacian monster and 1 Elemental Hero monster, 1 from your hand and 1 from the deck to the graveyard, to special summon 1 Neo-Spacian monster or 1 level 5 or higher Elemental Hero monster from your deck. If you do, add 1 Polymerization from your deck or graveyard to your hand. If you do special summon Elemental Hero Neos by this effect, it gains 1,000 attack. You cannot special summon from the extra deck except for fusion monsters the turn you activate this effect. So Engaged Neospace is basically meant to set up your go-to plays for a good amount of your fusion summons. Giving you a Polymerization can also help depending on the fusion that you want to summon out. I think our big one to go into is Elemental Hero Marine Neos, since this card can be special summoned by returning the above cards you control to the extra deck for the contact fusion, as well as the setup for Polymerization. But then you can use the additional fusion cards needed off of those cards summoned off of cards like our additional play of Instant Contact to then go for the fusion summon of some of our bigger fusions if we didn't have the Neos fusion play also. And then also the 3 copies of Neos Fusion, definitely one of my favorite spells in the deck. You special summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck that lists exactly 2 monsters as material, including Elemental Hero Neos, by sending the above monsters from your hand, deck, or field, ignoring the summoning conditions. And then if the card were to leave the field as a fusion, battled by card effect, or shuffled into the extra deck, you could banish this card from your graveyard instead, keeping the Neo-Spacian monster on the field without the need of Neospace by just being able to banish Neos Fusion. Or if your opponent were to get rid of it, you can do the same for depending on the monster you want to summon out. The most commonly summoned monster I would say off of Neos Fusion is just your Brave Neos. You can send Aqua Dolphin and Neos to summon out Brave Neos, or using Neos along with cards like Elemental Hero Prisma, or even sending your Crosskeeper to get it in the graveyard for your summon. It's very useful for the special summon of an Elemental Hero Fusion monster while it's in the graveyard, and then being able to use its own banish effect as well, except during the damage step. I also run 3 copies of EN Shuffle. You shuffle 1 Elemental Hero or Neo-Spacian monster you control into the deck to special summon 1 Elemental Hero or Neo-Spacian monster with a different name from your deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard to shuffle from your graveyard into the deck either 1 Elemental Hero and 1 Neo-Spacian, or 1 Elemental Hero Neos to draw 1 card. You can only use the effect of EN Shuffle once per turn, but this is just consistency once again. We have a good number of hero monsters in the deck and a good number of Neo-Spacian monsters that we want to grab, so this spell can just help to grab the specific one that we may need for our play. Also, 1 copy of Miracle Contact to shuffle back all of the monsters we set up in the graveyard, and the 1 copy of Instant Contact. You pay 1,000 life points to special summon 1 level 7 or lower Elemental Hero or Neo-Spacian monster from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. So this is meant to summon out our Marine Dolphin, which we can then use as a contact fuse with Neos to summon out our Marine Neos on the field also, and then also have the initial hand destruction that you can prevent from your opponent. Also the 2 copies of A Hero Lives to grab the Elemental Hero Prismas onto the field, and also the 1 copy of Miracle Fusion, the 1 copy of Polymerization, and also the 1 copy of Reinforcements of the Army, and the 1 Call by the Grave. The main play that we go for with the setup of the Polymerization to grab the Miracle Fusion as well, just to help to get out more banishes for our Elemental Hero Fusion monster for the extra deck summons, depending on what we want to summon, and then also being able to use those fusion materials listed on that card for the name of cards like Elemental Hero Prisma and our needed Neos monsters also. So depending on what you want to go for, you have all of those plays to rely on. And then lastly, for the traps, 2 copies of Favorite Contact. Special summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck that mentions a hero monster as material, ignoring its summoning condition by placing the fusion materials mentioned on it on the bottom of the deck in any order among the cards from your hand, field, and or graveyard, and or your banished cards. If you placed Elemental Hero Neos into the deck, neither player can return the monster special summon by this effect to the extra deck. So another way just to protect that Elemental Hero contact fused monster with this card. It's also more of a fast-paced setup for our Miracle Contact, even though it's not the play for the card being a trap instead of a spell, but still a great way just to keep that monster in the field without having it to be worried to be shuffled back, or being able to use our resources we already had to bring out some of the bigger monsters also. And then for the extra deck, I run 1 copy of Elemental Hero Air Neos, the 1 copy of Aqua Neos, the 1 copy of Flare Neos, and the 1 copy of Grand Neos. Once again, if you don't have the Air Neos, you can swap out the Air Hummingbird in the main deck for a copy of Dark Panther, and instead of Air Neos, put in a copy of Dark Neos for the lineup of just the easier cards to contact fusion, just needing Elemental Hero Neos, and the 1 specific Neo-Spacian monster. Our bigger boss monster is Magma Neos, but once again, this is just because we don't have the Dark Panther in the deck. So if you were to swap out any additional card for that, you can add potentially Storm Neos or even the other 2 of contact monsters in place. But Magma Neos is definitely one of my favorites with just the big attack boost that this card can get. And also the 2 copies of Elemental Hero Brave Neos, one of the easier cards to summon out with our use of our go-to play for the summon of our Neos Fusion, just sending a level 4 lower effect monster and Elemental Hero Neos to the graveyard. This can set up our Crosskeeper as well in the graveyard. If you special summon an Elemental Hero Fusion monster while it's in your graveyard, you can banish this card to draw 2 cards. So along with the Neos Fusion play, you'll get the draw power off of Crosskeeper also. And also the 1 copy of Marine Dolphin and the 1 copy of Elemental Hero Marine Neos. Now, another thing for the fusion power of getting out our Elemental Hero Sunrise to be able to search out Miracle Fusion is that you need the different attribute hero monsters, which we don't have in the main deck. It all comes in the form of the ones we run in the extra deck in the form of Marine Neos and our other Neo-Spacian monsters that I mentioned before. But also the 1 copy of Rainbow Neos and the 1 copy of Elemental Hero Neos Kluger for summoning out. You can get out Rainbow Neos with Neos Fusion as well, just being able to send Neos and Rainbow Dragon to the graveyard. And also for our instant contact, bigger boss summon, the 1 Elemental Hero Shining Neos Wingman and the Flame Wingman, which we would summon off of the instant contact to use for the summon of the fusion summon of our Shining Neos Wingman, which we'll need polymerization for, which is what the search for Engaged Neospace all helps to set up as well. And then also the 1 copy of Elemental Hero Sunrise for the Miracle Fusion search as well. And lastly, our only link monster that we run in the deck is our Elemento or Extra Hero Infernal Devicer. Needing 2 hero monsters, if it's link summon, you can reveal Hero Fusion in your extra deck to add up to 2 of the fusion materials listed on that card with different names from your deck to your hand. So even if you just reveal your Neo-Spacian monster, you can then add the needed monster for the Neo-Spacian and Neos off of those 2 cards just to give you more consistency of cards added back from your deck to your hand. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, the big setup that I mentioned before can come in the form of one of your easiest summons, which is just in the form of Neos Fusion. Activating this card, you can then send Neos and any of the needed monsters. If you were to send Crosskeeper, then you can summon out your Elemental Hero Brave Neos onto the field. And then with your Crosskeeper, if you special summon an Elemental Hero Fusion monster while this card's in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can banish this card to draw 2 cards, then place 1 card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. So with this play, you were given your Fusion monster, more draw into the deck, setting up thanks to the Crosskeeper as well. It's just one of the better targets to go into with Brave Neos. Another one you can go for with the Neos Fusion is to send the Rainbow Dragon and Neos to the graveyard. This will give you your Rainbow Neos on the field as well. And then the bigger play for your setup in the deck comes in the form of your Engage Neospace. So you send 1 Neo-Spacian monster and 1 Elemental Hero monster, 1 from your hand and 1 from your deck to the graveyard. To special summon 1 Neo-Spacian monster, level 5 Elemental Hero monster from your deck, if you do. So this card, then, with this play, you need the needed Neo-Spacian in your hand, and then the 1 Elemental Hero monster from your hand, and 1 from the deck. So then you can send this from your hand, and the additional hero monster, depending on what it is, from your deck to the graveyard, special summoning out the Neo-Spacian monster or 1 level 5 or higher Elemental Hero monster from your deck. So then this all comes down to what you may have in your hand as well. If you summon out your Neos off of the Engaged Neospace, you can then add the polymerization as well from your deck to your hand. And then special summoning Neos gains the 1000 attack. So if you're not going for the initial fusion play, you at least have the beefed up Neos on the field as well. But you having another resource in your hand, you could potentially have the Neo-Spacian to normal summon from your hand onto the field, Or better yet, you may even be able to have, let's say, your Neospace connector, because then when you summon out connector, you can grab another Neospacian on your deck to your hand. Using the 2 for the contact fusion, we'll shuffle them back into the deck, and then from there, you can summon out your needed fusion monster. But this comes down to if you want to grab a better target for the summon as well, you can send the second copy of Neos free run to the graveyard instead of cards like I Want to Go Prisma, to then be able to tribute the Neospace connector to grab that card back from the graveyard to the field, to then use for another potential fusion search. You can have the bounce power of Grand Neos, but also to avoid the shuffle back, you can then activate Polymerization, fusing the Grand Neos with the Neos you summoned onto the field to summon out your Elemental Hero, Sunrise, and then with this card being able to grab Miracle Fusion and having a better resource on the field along with needed monsters in the graveyard to potentially use with Miracle Fusion later on also, depending on what you may want to summon with the Banish of Neos and one other monster you set up in the graveyard. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I always like updating the Neospacian deck. It's one of my more, unique, builds for a pure variant of the Neospacian deck. But as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.